Hey guys, welcome back. Gift here again today. Two quick points before we get into the video. Point number one is I've intentionally been holding off making a video like this for quite some time now. I've not wanted to propagate false hope that either A, GPU prices were getting better, or B, it would just be easier to find the things. And point number two, as I always state, I am not a cryptocurrency expert, so please don't take any of my ramblings as advice on the actual matter of cryptocurrency. Okay, let's get into it. While the GPU market certainly hasn't been fixed, as it were, maybe this is the beginning of the end. When you look at this over the last month and a few days, the Bitcoin chart has absolutely been decimated. And I realize that fewer and fewer miners are using GPUs to mine Bitcoin, but it is the big daddy, the one that everybody looks to in the cryptocurrency to set the pace for the rest of the coins. In similar manner, we'll actually look at Ethereum here, which I do think a lot of miners have been using GPUs to mine for. You see, it has similarly been just bludgeoned over the last month. Although it seems to have reached a point of equilibrium, it does not have a lot of upward momentum at the moment. Of course, you also have the widely reported news out there now that almost in sync with the fall of Bitcoin, China has vowed to crack down on mining and trading activities inside of its borders. This is actually from last month, May 21st, here on Reuters. But you see, China will crack down on Bitcoin mining and trading activities as part of its efforts to fend off financial risk. However, in the same article, you also see it say China has banned crypto exchanges and initial coin offerings, but has not barred individuals from holding cryptocurrencies. And that may be a fly in the ointment. I'll circle back to that in a minute. Before I get into my second point here, look at the picture. Now, this is from 2017, so it's a few years old, but that's in mainland China. Anybody that thinks these kind of operators are getting their GPUs from retail is sorely mistaken. These are the people that are buying by the pallet load directly from distributors or directly from Nvidia. And like I said all along, they've been doing this since 2016 or 2017. They've done it all through 2020, and they're continuing to do it. So keep in mind, China hasn't actually banned the mining yet. However, what you have in this article from Ars Technica is the counterpoint to what would happen if they did ban mining outright in China. China's warning to Bitcoin miners is certainly to push many operations out of the country. At least one Bitcoin observer said that he anticipates miners pushed out of China will set up operations in Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and Afghanistan. Keep in mind, these are big-time operators we're talking about. These folks are making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars per year and may have millions invested at this point. So even if they have to pack up shop and move across the border to a more forgiving location, they are not going to just quit all of a sudden. Wait, I already hear you guys in the back going, "Hey, Giff, I thought you said there was going to be some good news today." Well, when we look at this article from over at Tech Radar, we see that ASRock, one of the board partners for Nvidia, is talking about maybe this is the beginning of RTX 3080 prices starting to drop some following the bust of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the potential mining ban in China. Keep in the back of your mind, there's a lot of money wound up in all these GPUs right now. Things aren't going to change overnight. However, what I think we're at is the beginning of the end of the delirium for people to just buy GPUs at any price. So let's go ahead and take a look at some actual pricing right now on the secondary market. So of course, when we talk about secondary market, we are talking about eBay mostly here in the US. And as you can see here, we're talking about the RTX 3080, and I have new checked at the moment. So let's check that out first. So we've got RTX 3080 cards that are new, still in the box, and the time is ending soonest. Let's look at some of the potential prices we have as these auctions start to wrap up. So this card is ending in less than 4 minutes. We're looking at a tough RTX 3080 OC. So a pretty nice card, one of the most popular ones out there for the 3080. Certainly Asus is a very popular brand. And right now we're seeing a price at $1,850. So, still about $1,000 over MSRP for the AIB partner kind of board it is. However, it is starting to come down under the $2,000 price point. Here we have an EVGA 3080. And what you see here with just under an hour left is a current bid of $1,850. However, there's only been 20 bids on this one, so this one may be running out of energy at this point. If you looked 5 months ago, these kind of cards were getting an insane amount of bids and going for a ton more money. Keep in the back of your mind, when you're buying used, you never know exactly what you're getting, and at this point, you may in fact be getting retired mining cards. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad. A lot of miners will run an undervolt to keep the cards operating at a good temp and at a good speed. However, you may end up in a situation where the card itself runs, but you may need to replace the thermal compound or the pads. Just always have that in the back of your head. So So here we have another EVGA card. This time we have the XC3 edition with a little bit under 4 hours left. The current bid is $1,725. Now, I do find this to be super interesting. There is a little bit of a delay on the shipping. It looks like the seller is out of town. Kind of poor timing on their part. However, they have a starting bid of basically $2,000 on this Zotac 3080. And the interesting thing to me is it's used. They started the bidding at $2,000 and they have had 0 bids on the card. So part of that could be the delay in shipping time, but the other part could be people just aren't willing to spend $2,000 on a used GPU, even for a 3080 at this point. Guys, please don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting these prices are great or that they're anything close to MSRP or any of those things. But if you go back just a few weeks and you look at the very end of May, you see everything is pretty much going for well over $2,000 at that point in time. That last point was quite frankly why I've held off on making a video similar to this. I wanted to see some real movement in the secondary market. Remember, the secondary market is totally unregulated. You don't even have the conscience, if you will, of big companies to kind of keep it in check. You have a buyer and a seller, and whatever the buyer is willing to pay is where the market's at. So those prices are starting to come down a little bit right now. This could be the beginning of the end of the problem. You're going to have some shakeup in China, so maybe a fewer GPUs get sold over there, at least for the time being. And like I've said before, I think you'll see fewer gentleman miners out there making big buys right now from scalpers. And as I've often said, I have 0 problem with the gentleman miner. It's the scalpers that I think are the real fly in the ointment. If everybody had to go to Best Buy or to Newegg or to Micro Center or to Amazon or to different places in the EU, then they wouldn't have this problem. They may still have some out of stocks, but you wouldn't have the ridiculous asking prices because you wouldn't have the scalpers driving up the prices on the secondary market.